These students are representing debate number 1, and they will introduce themselves individually. There are 2 absent students who will be introduced by proxies.
Hi, I'll be representing Bryant Lubert Hill. He's absent today and he's on the POI.
I'm representing Jack Hanna, who's absent today and will be a POI in debate 1.
I'm Carl Senko, and I will be debating for the affirmative.
Hi, my name's Anna Hosak, and I'm debating for the affirmative side.
Hi, I'm Corey Poland, and I'll be debating for the affirmative.
I'm introducing Nitesh Valapil. He's absent today, and he is arguing for the affirmative side.
Hi, my name is Josh Torquato, and I will be debating for the negative side.
My name is Jessie Cerroti, and I'll be debating for the negative.
I'm introducing Nick Sheriff. He is absent today, and he's arguing for the negative.
I'm Max DeBlasio, and I'll be arguing for the negative.
Historically, our government has always had policies and programs to help America and Americans reach our full potential, to help the needy and oppressed climb socioeconomic ladders, to help our country strong and secure, to fuel the American dream to the benefit of all. The American dream is our national ethos. It is a set of ideals in which freedom includes the opportunity for prosperity and success, and an upward social mobility for the family and children achieved through hard work in a society with few barriers. It only makes sense. Better Americans make for a better America. I'd like to start. This is why we affirm the resolution. Resolve, the federal government should establish a policy to significantly boost fair opportunities for all Americans to succeed. I'd like to clarify a few key terms. The first term is fair. It's defined as upright, honorable, without cheating or trying to achieve unjust advantage. Our second term is opportunity. It's defined as a set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something involving risk but with a greater reward. My next term is success. It's defined as achieving one's desired aims or attaining prosperity. We stand affirming the resolution for the following 2 contentions. Our first contention is an opportunity to level out the playing field. Being from privileged or disadvantaged roots greatly influence the fate of life. Each player has an equal chance to succeed. All play by the same set of rules, and we are provided this base fundamental to enter the game. Initially, government took charge for providing a means to provide basic literacy to adults. The idea was not wealth distribution, but to provide poor families with a means to provide for their family to a decent standard of living. For the economic machine to run smoothly, each social unit must contribute value. As the population grows, GDP expands with synergy. Conversely, resources that are idle become atrophic, counterproductive, and obsolete. The decay of human capital is cancerous to our national organism and erodes our civil foundation. Once assets become unproductive, growth stalls or becomes negative, the village leaders must assist with policies and resources to continue to survive or flourish. Our second contention is opportunities have been created by the government that wouldn't exist otherwise. For some, motivation, willpower, and drive exist, but have latent inertia, a push to get started, has great payback for all. Economic growth compounds naturally and attractively when group members are productive. In many situations, government policies is the lubricant and enabler for economic stimuli. A simplified illustration would be a prosperous primitive society generating wealth on a barter economy. We urge an affirmative ballot.
Before we begin into our contentions, we'd like to offer a few definitions. Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary defines fair as agreeing with what is thought to be right or reasonable. Because the United States Constitution was inspired by Enlightenment ideals, and Enlightenment philosophers argued that every man was naturally equal. What is thought to be right ought to be based upon this. Hence, every man ought to have an equal opportunity for success. Second, according to the Huffington Post, success is defined differently for everyone. Therefore, since this resolution specifies all Americans, everyone's definition of success must be equally able to be obtained. However, it is obvious that for some people, success is defined as wealth accumulation, so this must be taken into consideration in today's round. Our first contention is constitutional violations. According to the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, all powers not specifically given to the U.S. federal government are reserved for the state governments and the people. Many notable founding fathers, including the writer of the Constitution and President James Madison and President Thomas Jefferson, support strict construction, which is interpreting the Constitution literally, because nowhere in the Constitution does it grant the federal government to give fair and equal opportunities to everyone. For the federal government to do so would violate the Constitution. Indeed, if it were to do so, it would undermine the legitimacy of the law, and this sets a dangerous precedent for others, including aspiring dictators, to bend the Constitution to satisfy personal goals at the expense of the rest of the country. Moreover, it is important to recognize that many goals today cannot be achieved without money. One noteworthy aspect of a communist society, and one not using free market capitalism, is that everyone has the same wages. Giving everyone equal money would eventually force the U.S. government to create a communist society by definition. Our second contention is feasibility. According to an article written on the New York Times, discrimination accounts for part of America's social immobility. The United States federal government cannot possibly watch all interactions to prevent all discrimination, and therefore it cannot reasonably enact legislation to provide equal opportunity for all. Secondly, achievement between the poor and the rich was substantial, between 30 and 40%. Once again, the United States government cannot redistribute wealth because this would create a communist society. Additionally, redistribution of wealth decreases incentive for people to achieve their goals in the first place, thus decreasing the motivational for personal success. This would run contrary to the government's goal in the first place. However, allowing this redistribution to remain only would further hamper the poor. Finally, if you don't buy that link, look to the fact that according to a report from UCLA, the basis of an agricultural society is inequality. For thousands of years, men have been put into a position of farming and women raising children due to increased leisure time. This 1,000-year belief cannot be undone by merely a few pieces of legislation by the federal government. In conclusion, we urge a negative ballot.
Okay, so before I go on to my examples, I want to refute some things that the negative has stated. So they said that in the Constitution, nowhere it says that anything about equality, but there's a direct quote from the Constitution that says all men are created equal. Also, everyone getting the minimum wage leads to a communist society. That wouldn't lead to communism, that would lead to socialism, so that's not true. And then basis of an agricultural society was based on inequality. What about the Industrial Revolution? So just gonna let you guys sit with that. Okay, so our negative talks a lot about how the government should not redistribute wealth. However, the examples that I will provide have nothing to do with redistributing wealth. It's about implementing programs to people who have natural things that they cannot change about them, and therefore they do not have equal opportunities. So example one supports our contention of opportunity to level out the playing field. So handicap inaccessibility is a growing problem among communities. In Chicago, investigators found that many locations and train stations were not handicap accessible. 82% of wheelchair users report that public transportation is difficult or impossible to use. Also, many gyms do not offer lifts to aid wheelchair users to get into machines or into pools. And to support our first contention again, children who have or are being abused. Every year there are more than 3 million reports of child abuse in America that involve 6 million children. In these reports, 49% is physical or sexual abuse, 24.7% physical and emotional neglect, and 10.6% is emotional abuse. This type of abuse emotionally stunts a child and could leave them emotionally or physically permanently damaged. These children may not also have a way to get to school if they live in an impoverished area, or if they can get to school, they may not have support at home to do their schoolwork. This is out of their control. This is something that they have no way of changing, so therefore programs need to be implemented in order to help these children, such as mentoring programs, because otherwise then they would not have fair opportunities to either go to school or get into college. This supports our second contention. Opportunities have been created by the government that wouldn't exist otherwise. So example 3, 1/3 of Americans do not have any sort of healthcare system. If children do not have proper nutrition, then they will not develop correctly. Pregnant women may not have access to proper prenatal care, which can lead to damage to themselves and to the baby. Veterans who have a physical or mental issues from the military service may not be getting proper care, thus preventing them from holding a proper job. Many people with mental illnesses do not get the help they need and end up homeless. 20 to 25% of the homeless population suffers from mental illness. Yes?
So you're putting all these statistics out, but what kind of policies would you suggest that would make these better?
Oh.
There's already social programs out there for everything that you said.
Yes, I understand that there's social problems out there, yet these problems are still existing. So for handicap inaccessibility, I think that a policy needs to be implemented and that everywhere needs to be handicap accessible in some way.
Where did you get that information? Because I think there's a lot of handicap accessibility out there.
Disability Statistics Center. Also for I can't read that. Should okay, I can't read that. Oh, okay. I can give you examples of policies, but yeah, okay. So for children who've been abused, mentoring programs, and then also a healthcare system for all individuals, so that way they can get the proper healthcare that they need.
In this rebuttal speech, I'll first discuss definitions, then refute my opponent's contentions. I prefer our definitions as fair because we refer to the United States Constitution, and because the federal government is taking action, we should naturally look to the government's restrictions, which are outlined in the Constitution. Prefer our definition of success because ours is the most inclusive in today's round. We cover the greatest scope, and therefore we offer the opportunity for the most room for debate. Moving on to my opponent's contentions, my opponent's first contention was that we need to level the playing field. I have many problems with this, and I'm going to start with the first one. This is completely not feasible, and nowhere when they were talking about this did they say how they would go about this. We believe this to be, there's no feasible way for the government to do this, and with a lot of the contention, with a lot of the things they said, they had no plan. It was just an idea. I had a problem with that, and also it's against the Constitution, as we mentioned in our first contention. The Constitution gives all power not stated to the state governments and the people, and that was a power not stated, so it should be left to the people. Also, my opponent's second contention says the opportunity exists right now, and that it should exist. Once again, they have no plan to prove this to be true, and it's not feasible at all by the government. And finally, this is the definition of just redistribution of wealth. They're taking from the richer people who have the higher opportunities, and they're giving it to the poorer people. If that's not redistribution of wealth, I'm confused in the definition because that's what it is. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Where do you think poverty comes from?
Poverty just exists. It doesn't like come out of something. It just exists. I'm confused on the question.
I'm just saying, I think a lot of people assume that poverty comes from your own choices and you not working hard and being lazy. But are you aware, personally, I can tell you that people come from different countries and have to start over. So if they don't have those equal opportunities, it's a lot harder. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm not trying to say that poor people are poor because they're lazy. I know a lot of people who aren't as privileged, and they go to work every day and work their butt off to succeed, and that's what I'm not saying that poor people should stay poor. If they want to work their, they might have gotten, if they can work their butt off and move up the socioeconomic ladder, then I'm fine with that.
Right, but some people have to work their butt off just to make ends meet.
Okay.
So there's not that extra step that they have to take to really support them in what they. Yes, there is financial aid, and yes, there is a lot from the government to help people. But do you think it's enough?
Yes, I do.
I have a question. Do you have a question?
Also, I'd like to mention a couple of the things that they mentioned in the rebuttal. When they were talking about handicap accessibilities, this confused me. I know that there is a lot of legislation right now already worked out, and there are laws that businesses need to have handicap entrances, and public pools need to have lifts to get handicapped people into the pool. So I know that that already exists, and I was confused on why they brought that up. Go ahead.
You seem to be against the idea of redistributing the finance, taking from the rich, giving to the poor. So if you're not in favor of that, where do you propose the money comes from? The government or from the private sector, which would be the wealthier people?
Money for what? I'm sorry.
Any kind of social programs or reform. You're against redistribution of wealth So where do you propose the money comes from?
What do you?
One final answer, and then the time's up.
We don't believe that it should come from anywhere because we don't need money to run. We shouldn't be running the social programs that they're proposing. So
Okay.
if we don't run them, then we wouldn't need that money to come from the private sector or the government.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so first I would like to rebut some of the negatives points. I would first like to affirm that the government should take the power that's given to them. You clearly stated that all power goes to the state and the people. State government is part of government. It's not just federal government that makes legislation. It's also not Congress that, never mind. Okay. So handicapped accessibility, there's more to it than just saying that handicapped people need mobility, which are the laws that you brought up. That's an ableist view of the impoverished class, and you're not looking at the entire side of it, which means that handicapped people are less likely to get jobs, they're less likely to be paid properly. And if you look at all of the underprivileged and or disenfranchised groups of people in the impoverished class, you will see women, black people, you'll also see white people, but like women, black people, transgender. There are so many disenfranchised groups that you're taking a look at. Just, can they get to a job? Yeah, they can get to a job, but will they be paid the same? Will they have the opportunities to advance? There are other factors to look at when thinking about those things. I'm also here today to affirm the precedent set by affirmative action and the court case of Greta versus Bollinger and Gratz versus Bollinger in 2003. Affirmative action is an important tool to provide qualified individuals with equal access to educational and professional opportunities they would otherwise have been denied despite their strong qualifications. These policies make certain that all Americans are considered fairly and equally for jobs and educational opportunities. The precedent set by these court cases is that upholding the use of race in admissions decision reiterates America's commitment to affirmative action. The court concludes that effective participation by members of all racial and ethnic groups into the civic life of our nation is essential if the dream of one nation, indivisible, is to be realized. And from this court case, I would like to take a quote stated by one of the Supreme Court justices, and it states, on average, college-educated African-American women annually earn $19,000 less than college-educated white men. Also, on average, a woman with a master's degree makes $5,000 less than a man with an undergraduate degree. With the help of affirmative action, minorities and women now have greater access to the business world. We need to further this progress so that everyone has an equal shot at higher-level jobs and fair compensation. The Supreme Court agrees that the skills needed today are increasingly important in the global marketplace and can only be developed through exposure to a widely diverse people, culture, ideas, and viewpoints. So basically, affirmative action was a good thing, as stated by one of the justices on the Supreme Court. And therefore, I would like to conclude that because affirmative action did not lead to trillions in debt, that you don't need millions of dollars to just further equality. Yes.
You mentioned the gender gap, and do you know that the gender gap is closing? So the gender gap is very small. Jobs that historically attract more women than men are lower paying, so we need to get more women into the careers that pay more. So how do you suggest doing this? Do we really need a policy to have women in more paying jobs where they don't even want to be in those higher level jobs?
How can you say they don't want to be in those higher level jobs? Do you know every single woman?
No. But there are statistics that say that women do not want to go in these higher level jobs, so therefore men are in these higher level jobs and they are being paid more because they are in these higher level jobs.
All
So
my statistics are for women with the same job as a man, except for the one about, on average, a woman with a master's degree making less than a man with an undergraduate degree.
But women do not want to be in these higher level jobs.
How can you say that?
Because there are statistics that say this.
Okay, a statistic does not speak for every single woman.
What about women?
Where did you get that statistic?
It was on the women.com.
Okay, I don't really think women.com is a credible source for statistics. Yes.
You mentioned something about the differences in the government and how they need to, the negative side needs to detach from thinking it's a federal government. However, the resolution states that the federal government should establish a policy to significantly boost fair opportunities for all Americans to succeed.
Right. I said that because I was speaking about a precedent set by affirmative action.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everybody ready? Okay, so I'm going to start off with the top of their case. First, they talk about the American dream and social mobility. We agree, but also would like to say that social mobility and the American dream doesn't mean everyone has the equal opportunity to success. We call that communism, they call it socialism, whatever. We're not a socialist country, nor are we a communist country. That's why we can't have that. But then they talk about how success is achieving each one's individual goals. We agree with this one. That's why we're saying it's impossible for the federal government to make everyone have their own goals. If my own goal is to go to outer space and like 10 million other people's goals are go to outer space, the federal government can't subsidize this. But then let's move on to their first contention where they talk about level playing field, and then they talk about how everyone has this influence by life. Sure, we agree that everyone is born equal, but that's where it ends. The federal government can't say everyone is equal up until the age of 90. That's not what the Constitution or rather the Declaration of Independence says. But then they talk about basic literacy. Once again, they don't show you that the government enforces that everyone has to have basic literacy. And literacy in America is not 100%. But then they talk about how everyone must contribute value to society and that human capital decaying is bad. We agree with this, but that doesn't answer the resolution. They don't show you that, one, the federal government is allowed to do this because of the Constitution. We show you that the 10th Amendment doesn't allow the federal government, and even if you buy that this is a good thing, that human capital shouldn't be wasted, that should be left to the state government or local government. But then they don't show you that the federal government can do such a thing, because that would require so much money. The federal government literally cannot monitor 350 million people. But then let's move on to their second contention, where they talk about how opportunities exist right now and how economic growth is increased when the group is more productive. Once again, we agree, but they don't show you why this is possible or why it's constitutional. For example, it's good if everyone isn't starving. Sure, so let's raise trillions of dollars and feed everyone in Africa. Once again, that's not feasible. But then let's move on to their responses to our contentions, and basically they just list a whole bunch of programs. I'll go down them one by one. They talk about handicapped people and inaccessible people. First, they don't show you that the federal government can do such a thing. How's the federal government supposed to monitor literally every parking lot and to make sure that there's a handicapped parking space in each of them? But then second, they don't show you how that significantly boosts opportunity to success. Giving handicapped people a ramp won't make them billionaires overnight. But then they talk about child abuse. Once again, where is the solvency? How can the federal government literally go and monitor every house without becoming some like dystopia from 1984 and monitoring everyone? But then again, where is this funding for them to do so? But then they talk about healthcare. Once again, Obama tried to do this, give healthcare to everyone, and he failed because he literally can't monitor 350 million people. But then they talk about mental illnesses. Once again, how are we going to significantly boost these people's opportunities for success? By just giving them like medicine to everyone? That's not going to significantly boost their chances for success. But then they talk about affirmative action. Once again, even if you buy that affirmative action is good, that's handled by the state governments, as shown by the recent court cases in Michigan. But then they don't show you how giving affirmative action is good for success. Yes?
Okay, I actually have 2 questions.
Yeah. Just ask one.
Okay, well, you say a lot that the federal government cannot monitor this and that. Are you aware that the federal government can make regulations to meet certain standards?
Yeah, but it can't enforce it. At the point where it can't enforce it, it's not significantly boosting opportunities for all Americans. They have to do for all Americans because that's what the resolution asks. So let's move on. They talk about the gender gap. Once again, how do they enforce this gender gap in literally every corporation across America? Once again, the federal government can't do this because it simply doesn't have the resources. And even if you buy the fact that it should be doing this, that should be left to the state governments. That's our contentions. And for those reasons, we urge a negative ballot. What?
So I just want to clarify what I'm seeming to get. You are saying that the United States just seems too big for the federal government to monitor and take care of? It's just too big?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah.
So before I begin the crystallization of my points, I'd like to address the point that the negative made. First off, the national ethos does address social mobility. The national ethos was written in 1939 as a policy, or not as a policy, as a moral code the United States should follow, that everybody has the right to advance socially, to come over to America to work, and to get the White House with the picket fence 2.5 kids. We're not saying that if you give a handicapped person a ramp that they'll instantly become a billionaire, but they'll have the opportunity to go to work, to advance themselves, and that's what America is all about. We're talking about affirmative action in the way that we can increase people's opportunity to succeed. We're not talking about taking the wealth down from the wealthy and making everybody rich. We're talking about giving everybody opportunities, which ultimately makes our country better. If everybody's educated, if everybody's smart, if everybody's going out and working harder, that only makes our country better. Denying people these opportunities doesn't really pay off. I mean, the risk is worth the reward of a better country, of a better America. In order to deny these people is denying people the right they have as human beings to advance. It's denying America our right to better forward ourselves as a country. Second, I'd like to define that success was defined as achieving one's desired aims or attaining prosperity. You also use this definition of success in regards to achieving one's desired aims. And although you addressed that it was about money, our side did not. We're not talking about everybody, again, having wealth. We're talking about everybody having opportunities. If the federal government installs these opportunities, everybody will have a better equal chance to succeed. Everybody will be able to go out and do what they want and make the country better. Do any POIs have questions?
So are you proposing more education-based benefits to society, or more like federal programs to help subsidize and take care of people? Is it more education focused or what?
We're proposing both.
All right, thank you. That's all I wanted to ask.
Okay. So in conclusion, I'd just like to clarify once again that our side is not arguing for the advocacy of communism, which is a ridiculous argument, but we're advocating for social mobility, creating a better America through policies that allow everybody to be equal and fair. I urge your vote for the affirmative. Oh, yes.
Where do you think all this money is going to come from?
You don't need money to install policies. If you just have a policies that everybody needs to hire a certain amount of people, do you need money to hire? To make people hire people. Oh. Does the government need to supply money to a business?
Thank you.
Looking back at our definitions, we define fair as equal and success by each individual's desire. I'll offer the following two voting issues to prove the negative has won today's round. First, it is impossible for the U.S. government to increase equality without breaking the Constitution. We say the 10th Amendment reserves all other powers for the state and the people. Therefore, since the federal government is not given the right to give fair and equal opportunity, doing so violates the Constitution. Second, the U.S. cannot do this with its current means. For example, the amount of debt that we have in our national government and the amount of different racial inequality and inability to equalize, this is a strong reason why the federal government cannot do this. The affirmative is not specifically stating how they're going to do this. Yes?
Yeah. I'm just curious. I'm just wondering, how does promoting social welfare programs violate the Constitution? That's what I'm just curious about here.
We're going to say that the violations are based on the idea that they're trying to... All Americans are born equal, and then the federal government is not given the right to produce equality.
So it's not the government's responsibility to take care of people?
Oh.
After birth, it's not the government's responsibility to take care of people? Is that what you're saying? Or no? That's my last question.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned, your word said that in the Constitution it states that we are created equal, but America's not equal. So how do you think we're going to become equal? If I phrase that right.
Well, like I said, Americans are born equal, and it's not necessarily that we're trying to find equal opportunity. We're saying that it's impossible for the federal government because of the idea that they would be breaking the Constitution, and they just can't do it. It's not possible.
You're referring to the fact that every American is born equal. Every human being is born equal, but do you think that every human being is born into equal opportunities?
In the basic definition, yeah. And I would just summarize by saying that, again, the affirmative is stating all these reasons, but they're not specifically saying the policies that would have to be implemented. So therefore, we say that it's not possible, and we urge a negative vote.